There's been so much focus around the Baylor quarterback battle this offseason that we might have just missed that someone else won another huge position battle. This is the running back episode of Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Bears fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. Thank you guys so much for making it your first listen today and every day. As promised, the running back episode is upon us because, like I mentioned in the open, there's been so much talk about the quarterback battle, but we might have seen someone win the running back battle. We're going to tell you who that is, how the other backs are going to fit into this system, because there's going to be a lot of usage of these running backs, and how their new coach fits into the scheme as well, not just on the recruiting trail, how Keenan Hall has changed that room and changed their mentality. But starting with the kind of surprising news of the week. We've started fall camp. We're getting the media out there to Baylor football practices. We're starting to see who's lining up with the ones, who's lining up with the twos, and everything in between. And I was told from someone who's at the practices, I can't make them. They're during the Matt Mosley show, so I'm on the air. And someone had mentioned, I think it was Ricky Thompson, had mentioned it in that interview I was referencing in yesterday's show, that the number one running back reps have not gone to Dominic Richardson like they did last year. They are not going to Richard Reese, who was the number one running back the year before, but rather Dawson Pendergrass is out there with the ones as RB1 of this Baylor football team in 2024. The guy who was impressive as a true freshman last year. It seems to be a theme at that position. The last 2 years, Baylor's had really impressive true freshman running backs. And it might be that Dawson Pendergrass is actually the best fit to get the most carries in this Jake Spavital offense. And let's be clear, as much as we like the other two guys that I mentioned, Dawson Pendergrass was the most productive back that Baylor had last year. Had 79 carries for 338 yards. 338, not a huge number. Only averaged 4 yards a carry. It's not bad for a true freshman. Don't get me wrong. 5 touchdowns, led the team. But make no mistake about it. If you watch the games and you were out and you were like me and most of you everydayers and suffering through a lot of this season, one of the bright spots of this offense was Dawson Pendergrass. He's big. He can bounce off tackles. He's got some sneaky speed. He added some pass catching, which we didn't see from him in high school. That was not part of the scouting report necessarily on Dawson Pendergrass, but he became a dual threat back out of the backfield for this Bears offense, which proves to fit his game a lot better this year. And Dawson Pendergrass did talk about the 2023 season this week, and specifically what it meant to him and the other running backs. And man, you can feel the hurt in his voice a little bit when he talks here.
How much of an intensity jump has this season and this fall been compared to last fall?
It's been noticeable, yeah. I feel like last year we really didn't have this chip on our shoulder as we do this year. It was really embarrassing going like 3-9. You've got to like walk around campus. It's kind of like hurt your confidence a little. But I know none of us want to go through that again. So, I mean, we all got that chip on our shoulder, and I think that's just what keeps us moving.
It was really embarrassing. That speaks volumes, right? We know these kids weren't proud of 3-9. We know there's only so much they can say, and part of that is they're a good group of kids that are on the football team. But, you don't hear it laid out plainly like that. They say, it's not the season we wanted last year. It was tough, or we're trying to put it in the rearview mirror. Dawson Pendergrass said, yeah, we were embarrassed. 3-9. We know what the record was. And we got to go around campus and see our friends and in class and in extracurricular activities, whatever that may be. And you've got to wear that every week. You know that everyone in the class was watching you guys lose by a lot. So I like that he was out there and straightforward with it. And I think he really factors in to be a big reason why they could turn this around. And this Jake Spavital offense will have a lot of ball carriers in it. But when you're looking at the attributes that he brings, that Dawson Pendergrass brings, and you compare it to this style of offense that we've seen in the past, I can't help but see a little Lake Seastrunk in there. You know, a guy who is tough to bring down with arm tackles. While he might not look like it coming off the bus, he's a tough guy to bring down. He's got that speed, some sneaky speed. He is shifty. And I think, we didn't see Lake catch a lot of passes. We didn't see – that wasn't a big part of that Bryles offense. I don't know how much it factors into Spavital, but it's an extra wrinkle that Dawson Pendergrass can bring you after year one. And I'm telling you, you saw this kid, and, we're not big football scouts or anything, but you saw the kid's shiftiness last year, and it felt like, I don't know, maturity is not the right word, but it just felt like he'd been playing the college game before. He didn't seem too jittery. He wasn't making the wrong cuts. He wasn't avoiding contact. He seemed like he knew what he was doing every time down there. And that's why he was such a big part of whatever little success the Bears had last year. And it just did not look like a true freshman out there. Richard Reese, for the most part of his freshman year, did not look like a true freshman out there. There were times where towards the end of the season, he might not have been making the right cuts, and it looked like he had taken a lot of hits. But you just saw a guy in Reese in 22 and in Pendergrass in 23 that was like, this guy looks like he's been playing a couple years at this level of college football. And to that end, I guess it's not a huge surprise that Dawson Pendergrass is taking RB1 snaps. But I'm not going to lie to you, I was surprised by it. I just laid out all the reasons why you shouldn't be surprised and why I guess I'm not in hindsight. But, I mean, we all saw Richard Reese in 2022. And it seems like he's going to be more of a focal point in this offense. We all saw Dominic Richardson at Oklahoma State, and we saw the scouting report coming in, and I was amongst the people saying, here we go. You've got your Abram Smith guy that you were missing in 22. You've got him in 23 with Dominic Richardson. But you didn't have that. And you didn't have a lot of Richard Reese on the field. And certainly not on the backfield. You saw his flashes again in special teams towards the end of the season. But in terms of the running game, the bright spot was Dawson Pendergrass. And now, after laying all that out, I, like some of you, are like, yeah, maybe we should have thought it was Dawson Pendergrass. Maybe we just don't overthink this. But I see a power and speed combo that, first off, I wasn't expecting. I saw, all his tape and his scouting reports in high school. I didn't see his game live, so that was probably a big difference. But I did not expect that speed-power combo that it looks like we're going to get from Dawson Pendergrass in 2024, just like we got in the doses that we saw of him in 2023. Now, that leads to the question, how do the other two fit into this? Well, I'll also look at a third. How these guys fit into the running game. That's coming up on Locked On Baylor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and somehow, some way, after about 30 minutes of trying to keep this ad copy open, it still is not loaded. So we're just going with it. FanDuel, the sports aren't sporting like they're supposed to. I miss it. You miss it. We're so close to football, but until then, FanDuel is going to keep you in the game for the summer because they have a deal for you, a deal and a boost daily. Okay, so you can keep making your picks all summer long. Keep these games interesting. I know you want to. I know you're watching preseason football just like I need to get here. That is going to be FanDuel.com/locked-on to go and unlock that code. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, official partner of, the Locked On Podcast Network. That was not a bad ad read. That was pretty good, by the way. And if you like good ad reads on top of good college football content, I'm going to urge you for your second listen to be Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. I've been on several times with him. Guy knows his stuff. I don't know how these people do it, but he keeps up with the whole country, and he really does do a great job with it. So all the other teams, plus sometimes some Baylor, of course. So the trending, the breaking news, NIL, that world, all of it. Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On College Football every day. Make that your second listen after us here at Locked On Baylor. That's your second listen. Who's your second running back? I mean, I'll just start with this. Like I said in the first segment, the Spavital offense is going to be several backs. Okay, because again, we're going to go off what I know of as a Baylor fan, and that was that Brile style offense. It's not, exactly the same, but it's pretty similar from what we've seen Spavital run in the past. And that offense was never about one running back. Never. Even the wide zone, Baylor was running out more than one. But I think back to that, again, 13, 14, 15 specifically, and I'm thinking Lake Seastrunk. I'm thinking Shock Linwood. I'm thinking Devin Chafin. I'm thinking Johnny Jefferson. I'm thinking Terrence Williams. So many names. When you're going to play fast and you're going to establish the run while playing fast in a spread offense, you're going to have more than one bell cow. You just are. This is not Ron Dane's Wisconsin 25 years ago. You're going to have three backs at least taking carries in a game. So while Dawson Pendergrass looks to be RB1, I think we're still going to see a fair bit of both Dominic Richardson and Richard Reese. And maybe someone else too. Bryson Washington. Don't forget about Bryson Washington. This is a kid I saw a lot of in high school, actually, at Franklin. Won a couple state championships at Franklin. He is a hard-nosed runner. And we talk about all the things about Pendergrass, not afraid of contact. Bryson Washington is absolutely in there too. The man is an ox back there in the backfield. And he got hurt last year, so we didn't see a lot of Bryson Washington. We saw a little bit of him early on, so I believe he got to keep his red shirt because of that. We're going to see some this year if he's ready to play. And I do think that's a star down the line. And when we talk about these good, flashy running backs that are coming in the future classes, I'm talking about Davis Penn and Caden Knighton and, of course, Michael Turner Jr., they could be the understudies of Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass. I can absolutely see that. But you got two other guys in Richard Reese as a junior, now one of the elder statesmen of the crew, and Dominic Richardson. Now, we kind of know a lot about Reese, so I'll keep him on the back burner here. I'm going to talk about Dominic Richardson first because I admit it, man. I remember exactly where I was. I was at Logan Airport in Boston, coming back from a winter break to seeing my family over Christmas, and got the news that Dominic Richardson was committing to Baylor in the transfer portal. And it was one of the guys that I had kind of circled, that a lot of people in the media had kind of circled looking for a good fit for Baylor, but it was still a bit of a surprise. An intra-conference transfer, and one who was, not the lead back, but one who got plenty of carries at Oklahoma State. I think he might have saw Ollie Gordon in practice and said, I'm going to get some other carries elsewhere. And I loved it. I loved it because, again, I think something that you were really lacking in 2022 was an Abram Smith. And if Abram Smith grew on trees, Baylor would always be good. But that was something they were lacking. They had a good Richard Reese season, but it was about finishing runs. They didn't have those guys that were finishing runs, that were running over guys to get an extra couple yards. You didn't have a guy who it was 3rd and 3 and you were like, we're still running the ball because we believe in this guy. Richard Reese was great. He just wasn't that. And he was an 18-year-old freshman. He's still only 19, which is crazy. So you can't blame him for that. But that's all that to say, you bring in Dominic Richardson and you're like, is this the piece? Is this the missing piece that Baylor needs? Because now you've got a terrific back there with Richard Reese, and now you're adding basically an Abram Smith to this, and you've got the same quarterback from the Sugar Bowl team. Maybe this is all coming together. It wasn't. Plot twist, narrator, it wasn't. And I'm still, as you've heard me talk about in this offseason, I'm still trying to piece together why exactly that wasn't it. Because I've seen the tape on Dominic Richardson in this conference. I don't think he's a bad running back. I've seen Richard Reese plenty of times. I don't think he's a bad running back. But they both put up bad running back numbers. The offensive line stunk. It did. They were behind in a lot of games. And it got to the point where in October, though, they were saying, we need to pass every down. You remember that Cincinnati game? They didn't run the ball until, I think it was 25, 26 minutes into the game. They didn't run a running play. Jeff Grimes. That's drastic measures right there. It was Baylor's last win of the season, by the way. In mid-October, I think? Early October? Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. But you look at the Dominic Richardson numbers, and you're like, really? This was the guy we were excited about? 125 carries for 519 yards, leading rusher on the team at 519 yards, just over 4 carry, 1 touchdown. And it was at TCU late in November. You're thinking, what am I missing? I thought this was the guy, the year before, he went 149 for 543 and had less yards per carry. So was it surprise after the 23 season, or should we have seen this coming after 22? We knew his numbers after 22. I just thought he was going to take a jump, but maybe that's what he is when he's not playing behind a good offensive line. But I also look at the touchdown numbers. He got in the end zone 8 times in 22, just once again in 2023. It's not the end all be all, but there is a ton of value for a running back who gets in the end zone because those count for points. And Dominic Richardson was that. He was the short yardage back. So while you don't see, he didn't go for 1,000 yards, he maybe didn't get the most carries on the team, he got in the end zone because he's in those packages. Goal line, get the beef out there. He had 4 touchdowns in 2021 and 1 in 23. So again, I'm like, there's a lot of pieces here that need to be put together for this Baylor offense in general and to find out why they weren't effective running the ball last year. Let's look at Richard Reese. Obviously a little smaller than Richardson. Richardson at 6'1" and 216. Reese last listed at 5'9" and 181. But there's a ton of talent there. There is. He had the highest average yards per carry of anyone on the team, almost 5 yards per carry, only a couple of touchdowns on the ground. Those were both early in the season, obviously, a couple of touchdowns on special teams. But the drop-off was just incredible. He drops off half a yard a carry. It was even better in 22. He goes from 962 yards to 306, a third of his yards. 14 touchdowns down to 2. And carries 190 down to 66. Bingo! There's your answer. Why this will be a question that will haunt me to my grave. Why wasn't Richard Reese getting more carries last year? There's an answer out there. I want to know what it is. Because look, I don't want to get conspiratorial with it. We aren't at practice every day. So there's some, my job is to analyze and comment on. But there is a line of like, hey, we weren't at practice every day. What was happening here? But you could see a frustration from Richard Reese on the sidelines and not to say he had a piss poor attitude or anything. You could just see a frustration. Any player would get frustrated, and he got frustrated. You could see it in his post-game press conference in that West Virginia game after he did have the 2 touchdowns on special teams and kickoff returns. So you just wonder, like, what happened here? He's not going to be someone who's calling out the coaches or anything like that, but what is happening there? And it was crazy to just see that bolt of lightning in week 12, game number 12, I should say. He comes out there back-to-back, kickoff returns for touchdowns. Where was this guy? Why isn't he getting touches out there? And he wasn't even getting them in that game. I know he's going to catch his breath, but let the kid cook. Let him spin, coach. So I do believe all 3 of those guys, plus hopefully a healthy Bryson Washington, are going to get carries. But how many carries? How much of the rock are they going to see? Part of that will be up to their running back coach, Keenan Hall. He's the one coaching them up. And he has changed a lot around this team. We've talked about it in the recruiting trail, but also in that running back room. And there is a lot of high praise for him. We're going to talk about that coming up on Locked On Baylor. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. I still don't have the read. It still has not loaded, so we're just going with it. But you guys know I really love Gametime. I like all of our sponsors. Like, truly, that's no BS. But I love Gametime because when I want to go to a game, I don't want the hassle of jumping through hoops to buy tickets. So I go to Gametime. They got, the best deals going on throughout the weeks, flash deals, zone deals. You can also see the all-in pricing when you're looking at those tickets. So you see the price you're going to pay. You can also see the view from your seats. So you're not taken off guard when you're sitting behind a pole or anything like that. I have actually avoided that because of the good folks at Gametime. Plus, I'm a little wishy-washy, and I like to buy tickets the day of. That is the best place to buy them. You can save up to 60% on last-minute ticket deals, and it's backed by the best ticket price guarantee, and that's 100. Which will credit you 110% of the difference. I love Gametime. I really do. So go find the app, Gametime. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Once again, download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, locked on, COLLEGE, for $20 off your first order. Gametime, last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Sorry, guys. I feel really great about nailing both those reads without the copy in front of me. Boy, this kid might have a future. Speaking of having a future, Keenan Hall is giving Baylor football a future. My God, these segues, man. I got it. I nailed it. Keenan Hall is a huge part of Baylor's future, right? We talk about his success on the recruiting trail. It has been palpable. It has been measurable. All of the recruits are talking about, Keenan Hall. They talk about Dallas Baker, too. They talk about Dave Aranda. They talk about Jake Spavital, but they say, Coach Hall was on my case early. He saw the potential in me before everyone else did, before I even did some cases. And you see these guys who are looking at SMU, and I love a good chance to put down SMU. I don't think they were looking at SMU. I think they were looking at Keenan Hall. And bang, he comes to Baylor, and all of a sudden these guys start committing to the Bears to play Power 3 conference football. But also these current running backs are big fans of Keenan Hall, which kind of gets lost in this. He is the running back coach, and that's a very important position group on this year's team. We heard Dawson Pendergrass this week and Richard Reese this week, both complimenting Coach Hall with the intensity that he brings, the confidence that he instills in them, and calling back to his time as a player. And Keenan Hall was a pretty talented player, especially in high school. And I think part of what is so great about, or such a big part of the Keenan Hall appeal and such a big part of his character and the energy that he brings, is he is a South Oak Cliff guy. And he mentions that a lot. He doesn't let you forget. He's a sock guy, South Oak Cliff. And he has been in big time football. And you go watch South Oak Cliff. I'll tell you where you can find him. Okay. About the third week in December, you can go see them play at AT&T Stadium. And every week before that, they've won 2 of the last 3 state championships. And you go and watch a South Oak Cliff game, there's a ton of energy on that sideline. There just is. There is a swagger. There is a cockiness. They back it up, and they bring a lot of energy. And I think Keenan Hall, even though, back a couple of years, I won't say how many years, Keenan, but back a couple of years at South Oak Cliff, he brings that kind of energy to his room. And again, both Richard Reese and Dawson Pendergrass said, man, he is the one getting us fired up as we go out to the field, the practice field, from the meeting rooms. He's the one getting us going. And all the players have talked about the different energy on this year's team. We kind of addressed that a little bit in yesterday's episode. It's guys like Keenan Hall that have changed that. I said it's a lot of the same players, but there are a lot of different coaches on here and on the staff. And sometimes that's what you need. You need fresh blood that is going to energize the place. And they've brought in some young coaches, guys who are on the rise. Keenan Hall certainly amongst them. And just that alone is putting them in a better position than they did last year. Like, seriously, it's that simple. I think if they're bringing more energy to this team and they're getting their guys fired up, we're already at a better level than 2023. And you've also got a talented group back there. So, look, we know what he can do on the recruiting trail, but now you're hearing the players saying, yeah, this guy's got a whole different energy around this group, around this offense, and I cannot wait to see it play out on the field. Is it even important who running back one is? Drop that down in the comments below or tweet at us at Locked On Baylor if you're not watching on YouTube. But let me know who you think it should be, if it really matters. And again, the difference that Keenan Hall brings to this team. And tell me your favorite flavor of ice cream down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, ring that notification bell so that you'll get notified every time we're dropping an episode, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We will be back Monday, probably with another Big 12 opponent preview. I tried to do 2 a week. I had to push it off this week for personal reasons, but probably on Monday, unless something breaks on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.